What is going on, everybody? Today we have NFL Mock Draft 3.0 here for the 2022 NFL Draft. This mock draft will be 2 rounds, my first 2-round mock draft of the year, with trades, and it will be me trying to predict the pick. I'm not choosing for the teams who I would go with, rather I am trying to predict who these teams are going to end up with. So I don't necessarily agree with all of these selections, and I imagine you all likely will not agree either. I'm trying to predict what these teams are going to do. We're at a very pivotal stage in draft season as we have made it to the Scouting Combine. This is a pre-Combine mock draft. Although the Combine has technically started already, this is being recorded and uploaded on Wednesday, March 2nd. So I know the quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends are going through their media stuff today. But none of the on-field drills, none of the medical testing or measurables, none of that stuff has happened yet. So because of that, nobody's stock has really gone up or down because of the Combine directly. But I am trying to predict a little who's going to go up and who's going to go down because of the Combine. I kind of did that here in this mock draft. So without further ado, let's get the show on the road. So the Jacksonville Jaguars are on the board here at 1, and in my 3 mock drafts, I've had them pick 3 different players with this selection. In the first one, I had them select Kayvon Thibodeaux. In my previous mock draft, I had them go Aiden Hutchinson, and now I have the selection being Evan Neal. It seems like there is starting to become a little bit more of a consensus that Neal will be the pick. Not everybody is in cohesion with this, but I would say a majority of the draft community right now expects this selection to be Neal. From what I've heard per the Combine, it seems like the Jaguars are likely to pick an offensive tackle here, and it seems like most likely it would be Evan Neal or Ikem Ekwonu, which makes sense. Personally, if I'm the Jaguars, I would consider Charles Cross as well. I would argue he's the best pass protector of those 3, and obviously they are focused on protecting Trevor Lawrence specifically. So if I'm Jacksonville, I would definitely throw Charles Cross's name in the ring there, even if he isn't as elite of a prospect. I would say he's right up there with both Neal and Ekwonu, someone the Jaguars could certainly consider. But Evan Neal is a great prospect in his own right, and this would not be a bad selection at all. The Detroit Lions at 2 go edge rusher Aiden Hutchinson. The Michigan kid stays home. I think this is a home run selection here for the Lions, who need a lot of help on the defensive side of the ball. I do think they have bigger needs than edge rusher. Someone like Kyle Hamilton at safety would fill a massive need for them. However, safety at 2 is a little bit rich, and with a prospect like Hutchinson on the board, that will be the move. The Houston Texans at 3 are in a weird spot because they could go pretty much anywhere, considering their roster is not good, and they don't have a ton of building blocks on their team. Of course, there's still question marks with the whole Deshaun Watson trade saga. Personally, I don't think he gets traded by the time we reach the draft because the legal stuff really hasn't gone anywhere, and we're only 2 months away from the draft, so I don't think we will have a resolution by then. So I presume Deshaun Watson probably will stay with the Texans after this draft. I have Houston picking Kyle Hamilton to safety out of Notre Dame. I don't know how Texans fans are going to feel about this because their roster needs so much, and they're using a top 3 pick on a safety, and obviously the positional value isn't great, but I do think Kyle Hamilton is the best pure football player in this draft class, so I don't really think you could go wrong with Hamilton here with the 3rd pick. At 4, I have the Jets getting Ikem Ekwonu, offensive tackle out of NC State. He can play tackle and guard as well. There are questions with Mekhi Becton's future in New York. Personally, I think the rumors of them wanting to trade Mekhi Becton are smoke, but maybe there's something going on behind the scenes that we don't really know about. The Jets do have some other solid players at tackle. George Fant has been a fine free agent signing, but if you can get someone like Ekwonu here, it's going to be hard to pass up. Although there are other players they could consider here, certainly Kayvon Thibodeaux would make a lot of sense, but Thibodeaux has been dropping for some people, and considering everybody has Thibodeaux falling, I do think Thibodeaux's stock has probably gone down a little bit, but not far enough to where he goes out of the top 5 yet. The New York Giants are going to pick him up here. The Giants are obviously beginning their rebuild, a new head coach, new general manager as well. Kayvon Thibodeaux is one of the most physically gifted players in this draft class and has a sky-high ceiling at one of the premier positions in the NFL. So I think it's going to be hard for the Giants to pass on him here. The Carolina Panthers at 6, this very well could be a quarterback destination. However, I don't think any of the quarterbacks are worth being selected here at 6. I think the Panthers may opt for a veteran. Matt Rule knows his job is sort of on the line this season. They know they need to get somebody who can win them games. So I have them selecting Charles Cross, the offensive tackle out of Mississippi State. The Panthers need offensive line really badly as well, and as I said earlier, Cross is the best pass protector in this draft class, and in my opinion should be considered by Jacksonville with the number 1 overall pick. Cross would have been the easy selection for the Giants at 7, so with him off the board, I actually have this pick getting traded. The Giants are going to make a move with their fellow New York team. It's the New York Jets, moving up 3 spots to select Ahmad Sauce Gardner, the cornerback out of Cincinnati. So the Jets now have 2 picks here in the top 7. The Jets will also receive a 2023 7th rounder from the Giants. New York will get pick 10, pick 68 in the 3rd round, and a 4th rounder next year. I think that's fair value here for the Giants. I do think they would get quite a bit, but it is only 3 spots, so I don't think it's like the Jets would have to give up a premium. I don't think Sauce Gardner would fall to 10. The Falcons at 8 and the Broncos at 9 both would make a lot of sense, so that's why New York feels like they have to go and trade up to get their guy. All of the buzz has been that Sauce Gardner is CB1 in this draft, and I agree. I think he is the best corner in this draft class. 6'2", 200 pounds, phenomenal production, very solid ball skills, just a super productive player. The Jets do have a number of young, talented guys at corner. Michael Carter II, Brandon Echols, and Bryce Hall are all recent day 3 picks who have all looked pretty good. But if you can get someone like Ahmad Gardner who can be a true alpha number 1 corner, it's hard to pass on that opportunity. And then the Atlanta Falcons at 8. The Falcons could go a number of different ways, but their pass rush was abysmal last year, so I have them getting Trayvon Walker out of Georgia. Walker's stock has really gone up as of recent, and I imagine it will continue to go up here after the combine. He's a versatile defensive lineman who can play on the edge and inside. The Falcons need both, so wherever they feel he excels, just plug him in there. One of the ultra many talented players on that Georgia defense, and I personally do believe in the Trayvon Walker hype. I do think he will be a top 10 pick as of now, and the Atlanta Falcons would make a lot of sense. Of the entire mock draft, I think I'm most conflicted on this Denver Broncos pick. I have them selecting Malik Willis, the quarterback out of Liberty, the first QB off the board. I really don't know how to feel about it, though. Fields has some similar athletic traits to that of Justin Fields last year, although Fields was significantly the better prospect. The Broncos had the opportunity to pick Fields, and they didn't. They ended up picking Patrick Surtain, and so far that looks like a great pick. Surtain played at a super high level last season, but if they passed on Fields, there is a part of me that thinks maybe they would pass on Malik Willis here. However, Malik Willis is the most physically gifted quarterback in the draft. Maybe they see something in Willis that they didn't in Justin Fields. Personally, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to stay in Green Bay. It seems like the Packers are working on a new deal with him. Although, as someone who strongly dislikes the Packers in real life, I would not mind seeing Aaron Rodgers get moved, particularly to Denver, but I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Russell Wilson's going to be on the move. I don't think Deshaun Watson's going to be on the move. So the Broncos' best bet is a veteran or a rookie, and I have them going the rookie route with Malik Willis. They already have Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, who are both fine enough stopgap quarterbacks, so I don't think they would make as much sense as someone like Washington, Carolina, or Pittsburgh in like the Jimmy Garoppolo or Mitchell Trubisky race. So that's why I had them going with Willis here. Now the Giants are up at 10. They moved back 3 spots with the Jets, and I have them selecting Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah. I know Giants fans want offensive line, and rightfully so, because they need offensive line pretty badly. There are a couple guys that they could consider here. Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa. Tyler Linderbaum out of Iowa would make a lot of sense. Hell, I would even make a case for Zion Johnson, the guard out of Boston College. I do think he is talented enough to go in this range. But I think the Giants really want to focus on value rather than need for right now, and the value here with Devin Lloyd at 10 is phenomenal. He is one of the best linebacking prospects we have seen in a long time. Big frame, 6'3", 235 pounds, very high level of production. This is a guy who I think could slide in right away and not only be a high-impact player for the Giants' defense, but also a very high-character guy. He was a team captain at Utah, one of their main leaders, and I think Thibodeau at 5 and then moving down to 10 to get Devin Lloyd would be a grand slam draft from the New York Giants, even though they are not getting an offensive lineman here. Spoiler alert, they will in the second round. Pick 11 was another choice I was very conflicted about. The Washington Commanders certainly will have someone new command the quarterback position, but I have them going with a corner instead. And it's not even one people would think of. It's actually Trent McDuffie out of Washington over Derek Stingley, over all of the quarterbacks on the board. Personally, I think with all the rumors surrounding Washington and some of these veterans, I think that's the route they would rather go. Again, I don't think Rodgers, Wilson, or Watson will be on the trade market, but they have been rumored to be interested in Jimmy Garoppolo. The Mitchell Trubisky hype within the past 2 days has gone completely off the rails. I think someone's going to give him big money, and that team very well could be the Washington Commanders. So personally, I think they're going to go out and get a veteran, and I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback high. Obviously, that's projecting a little bit. We'll see what happens after free agency when we get painted more of a clear picture, but for now, I have been picking McDuffie. At pick 12, we've got a trade. The Minnesota Vikings are going to move down with the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers will send picks 12 and 76, while the Vikings will get 17, 48 in the second round, and a future 4. So pretty much the Vikings move down 5 spots. They swap 2s and 3s, so now the Vikings have 2 2s, the Chargers have 2 3s. Minnesota adds a future 4th. I think it's a pretty fair deal for both sides. And the Chargers are moving up for Drake London, the wide receiver out of USC. Drake London has gotten a ton of buzz over the past month or so. I'm personally not as high on London as others. I think there are better receivers in the class, but Drake London does have some very unique skills. You don't find many receivers with his size, with the ability to make plays after the catch that he does and has the reliable hands that he does. He's not a great separator off the line of scrimmage, though. He does have some medical question marks. He's not going to be participating at the Combine, although he will be participating in his pro day, assuming he's all good. And he's also a little bit slender. He's only around 210 pounds. You don't really find many receivers with his frame. So he's a very unique prospect, and he's very polarizing, which is why I'm really sort of conflicted on him. But I would say as of now, he will be the first receiver off the board, and I think the Chargers, if they want him, they have to move up. The Chargers do have bigger needs. Their run defense was abysmal last year, but I do think Mike Williams will find a new home this offseason. The Chargers very well could use that money to improve the run defense, and then here in the draft, go out and get their playmaker. At pick 13, the Browns select Garrett Wilson, wide receiver out of Ohio State. In the 3 mock drafts, I think this is the only pick that has stayed the same in all 3 of them. It just makes too much sense. Garrett Wilson, to me, is the best receiver in the draft class. The Browns need receiver really, really badly. Wilson can do it all. He's a great route runner, good hands, very good after the catch, high-level athlete. There aren't really many concerns with Garrett Wilson's game, which is why I'm such a big fan of him, and I think he would instantly be the best receiver on their roster. At pick 14, the Ravens go Derek Stingley, cornerback out of LSU. I think this is a really fun fit. The Ravens are obviously known for their defense, and getting someone in Stingley who at one point in time looked like maybe the best prospect in this draft class will be a very fun pick. The Ravens really lack depth at corner, which we saw last year when they were literally starting practice squad guys by the end of the season. They will get Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters back, but Marcus Peters is not getting any younger. Plus, I think it is fair to say he's a little bit injury prone. And Marlon Humphrey's a very good player, but if you can add Derek Stingley to that group, that'd be something. That'd be quite the trio. Pick 15, the Philadelphia Eagles, with their first of 3 first-round selections, go with Jermaine Johnson, the edge rusher out of Florida State. He had a fantastic Senior Bowl week. Really, really talented player. I think this would probably be the latest that he goes. Both Johnson and Trayvon Walker have been 2 of the biggest draft risers, I would say, over the past couple of months, and I'd be very surprised if they're not top 15 picks. The Eagles were up at pick 16, but I actually have them moving this selection to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers will move up 4 spots. They're also going to add a future 7th. The Eagles will get pick 20, pick 84 in the 3rd round, and a 7th rounder this year. So pretty much the Eagles are moving down 4 spots, getting a 3rd rounder. I think that's very fair value for Philadelphia. As for the Steelers, they're going to go up and try to get their franchise quarterback here with Kenny Pickett, the Pittsburgh alum. So he gets to stay in Pittsburgh, going from the Pitt Panthers to now the Pittsburgh Steelers. There are some question marks about Kenny Pickett. Obviously, the hand size is a little bit of a concern. he would have the smallest hands of any starting quarterback in the NFL. Some people are trying to rub it off as if it's nothing. I think it's definitely something. I know we saw similar concerns with Joe Burrow, and obviously that has not been an issue, but Joe Burrow's hands are nearly an inch larger. So it is quite the difference in my opinion. Pickett doesn't have the athletic traits that really wow you and suggest that he's going to be a great player, but he might be the most NFL-ready quarterback in this draft. And I think the Steelers, although they are rumored to love Malik Willis, I think it would make more sense for them to get somebody who's more NFL-ready because this team is built to win football games this season. And I think if they were to draft Kenny Pickett here, I think that'd be a good landing spot for Pickett. And I think there's no reason why the Steelers can't get back to the playoffs, assuming Pickett is the player we think he is. So I don't have a problem with this move for Pittsburgh, even if I think there are better quarterback prospects on the board. And for the Eagles, why not add another day 2 pick? So I think it's a pretty good move for both sides. The Minnesota Vikings are now on the board here at pick 17. I have them getting offensive guard Zion Johnson out of Boston College. This might come off as a little bit of a surprise to people, but I think Zion Johnson goes in this range, and I actually feel quite confident about that. Zion Johnson made some of those defensive linemen at the Senior Bowl look like children. I mean, he was just a man amongst boys out there. Clearly a superior prospect and somebody who I think is easily one of the most 10 talented players in the draft class. If not for positional value, you can make the case for him going higher. I think the Vikings could look to improve the offensive line, and I think this will be a good first round for Minnesota. You move down 5 spots, you do lose your third, but you also add a second, and Zion Johnson here I think would be a fantastic selection. The New Orleans Saints at 18. I am fascinated to see what the Saints do because they're in such a weird spot. We haven't really seen a team like the Saints in this poor of a cap situation. They have a number of big-time free agents, including left tackle Teron Armstead, who I expect probably will not be brought back. New Orleans obviously has a ton of bad contracts in there. They have really backloaded so many deals and restructures, and it's finally starting to bite them here in the rear end. So I think it would make sense for New Orleans to move down because they're probably going to look to trade a lot of veterans away within the next year or so their roster is going to get considerably worse. So I think if they can get more picks, that would make a lot of sense. However, I had them staying at 18 and getting Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa. I think this pick would make a lot of sense. With Teron Armstead gone, they're going to need a replacement. I could see Penning go higher than this. We've seen a number of offensive linemen in recent years who are athletic as him completely tear up the combine and shoot off the draft board. 2020, look at Mekhi Becton and Tristan Wirfs. Although Wirfs was always projected to be like a top 15 pick, the point still stands. Obviously, Wirfs has been fantastic, and Becton, when he's been on the field, has also played quite well too. So I think we could see a similar rise with Trevor Penning. I don't think he goes in like the top 10 or anything, but I think here at 18 would be fair value. At 19, the Eagles now with back-to-back selections get Tyler Linderbaum, the center out of Iowa. I know this positionally doesn't make a lot of sense for the Eagles, but for one thing, Linderbaum's one of the best players in the draft class regardless of position, so value-wise, you're getting yourself a stud. The Eagles have Jason Kelce, who apparently is planning to come back next year. You also have Landon Dickerson, who played center at Alabama, moved over to guard last year and played quite well as a rookie. So why would they draft another center? Well, you just got to go for value sometimes. Kenyon Green here, the guard out of Texas A&M, would work, but I think Linderbaum is the better prospect. The Eagles' offensive line coach is probably the best at his job in the NFL, so I'm sure he would be able to make the most with Linderbaum, who could always slide to right guard as a rookie. Maybe once Jason Kelce is gone, you move Linderbaum to center, you keep Landon Dickerson at guard. I think that would make a lot of sense, to be brutally honest, and I think that'd be a nice pick for them. And then at 20, the pick they got from the Steelers a few moments ago, I had them going with a corner, but maybe it's not the corner that people are expecting. I have them selecting Kyler Gordon out of Washington. Both of the Washington corners, I think, are going to go earlier than people expect. Trent McDuffie and Kyler Gordon really aren't being talked about where they should be. McDuffie seems like he will be one of the first 3 corners off the board, and then Kyler Gordon is right in that next group of guys, and I think maybe top 20 is a little rich for Kyler Gordon, but I absolutely could see this as a possibility. So I think this will be a fine first round for the Eagles. Jermaine Johnson, Tyler Linderbaum, Kyler Gordon, and adding a third rounder from the Steelers. At 21, the New England Patriots select Nakobe Dean, and I think this is a slam dunk here for the Patriots. Nakobe Dean is a fantastic player. The Patriots obviously love having talented linebackers. I think Devin Lloyd would make more sense for New England. I think he's a little bit more scheme versatile. We know Bill Belichick loves his versatile players, but Devin Lloyd's not going to be on the board at 21. I also would not be surprised at all if Nakobe Dean is off the board way earlier than this, but this is just sort of how the board played out. But this would be a good pick here for New England. 22, we've got another trade. The Tennessee Titans are going to move up 4 spots with the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders will obviously get pick 26, along with the Titans' 7th rounder this year and a 3rd next year. So the Raiders aren't adding any great picks in this year's draft other than Tennessee's 1st rounder. But I still think this is a fair trade. You're adding another day 2 pick for the future, and you're only moving down 4 selections. As for the Tennessee Titans, they're a team who likes to take risks. Jameson Williams has the Titans written all over them. Jameson Williams' stock has gone down a little bit since his injury, and if there's one team who's going to be willing to make a move up for a player coming off an ACL tear, it is the Tennessee Titans. We've seen in recent years they've gone after big gambles. In 2019, they did it with Jeffrey Simmons. That pick has been a grand slam. 2020, they did it with Isaiah Wilson. That was a big swing and a miss. Last year, they did it with Caleb Farley. Still a will see. So obviously, when you take a big gamble, it's no guarantee it works out. And I think of their recent first-round picks, you throw Jameson Williams in the mix, Williams doesn't feel like that big of a gamble. According to what Jameson Williams said at the Combine today, he said that his rehab process is going ahead of schedule, so he may be able to return sooner than expected. And with how modern medicine works, a torn ACL is a lot easier to come off of rather than like 10 or 15 years ago. So personally, I wouldn't really be that concerned with the injury for Jameson Williams unless you have medical tests come back concerning. If all the medicals come clear, I think Jameson Williams is going to end in like the top 15 on my board and probably wide receiver 2, maybe even a case for wide receiver 1. I think he's that good. And I think he should absolutely be a top 20 pick. So if the Titans are able to make this move, I don't know how Titans fans are going to feel about it, but if I was a Titans fan, I'd be pretty fired up. Even if wide receiver is not their biggest position of need, they do need another one, and Jameson Williams is an absolute stud. At 23, we've got another trade. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are moving up 4 spots with the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals will get 27 and 91 for this selection, so a pretty straightforward deal. And the Bucs are going to go quarterback Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. Okay, this is an interesting one. I think the Bucs will look to get a different quarterback, and I personally think it's going to be in the draft. They did pick Kyle Trask in the 2nd round last year. I don't think Kyle Trask is a franchise quarterback. Since they used a 2nd-round pick on him, maybe they're going to give him a shot as that investment, but the Bucs also need to realize that there's a shot he doesn't work out. So maybe they go after a veteran. I don't think they would give big money to somebody like Mitchell Trubisky, but maybe they get someone a little bit worse and a little bit cheaper, say like a Marcus Mariota. But personally, I think the Bucs are going to lean towards the draft. Desmond Ridder is one of the more pro-ready quarterbacks in the draft. He does have some good physical skills as well. So Desmond Ridder will be the quarterback of the future for the Buccaneers. And if I'm a rookie QB, I don't think there's a better landing spot than Tampa Bay, who have weapons on offense. Although Chris Godwin's probably gone. Leonard Fournette might be gone. Gronk is probably gone. But they still have an elite offensive line, even without Ali Marpet. They still have Mike Evans. They're developing some young receivers on the roster. And obviously, Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich are 2 great offensive minds. So I think that's a perfect landing spot for any rookie quarterback. And I think they would be able to make the most of somebody like Desmond Ridder, who has a lot of potential, but sort of needs to tap into it. The Cowboys at 24 go Devontae Wyatt, defensive tackle out of Georgia. Wyatt's one of the older players in the class. I think he could also be a little bit more pro-ready. Again, another one of the phenomenal Georgia defenders who, as you'll see, will have another first-rounder here in just a little bit. So I think this pick would make sense for the Cowboys. It fits a need, and they're getting a pretty good player. At pick 25, I have the Buffalo Bills getting Treylon Burks, wide receiver out of Arkansas. I think a lot of people are going to disagree with this pick, and not necessarily the selection itself. I think Bills fans would be elated to have Treylon Burks on their offense, but I think a lot of people are expecting Treylon Burks to go way higher, and I could see that. But personally, I think Treylon Burks is going to go a little bit later than expected. I know we've seen the Deebo Samuel comparisons with him. Can we just all agree to stop that? He's not Deebo Samuel. Yes, he has abilities that Deebo Samuel has, but why are we throwing the Deebo comparison around like it's nothing? The only person who can do what Deebo Samuel can do is Deebo Samuel, okay? Treylon Burks is a fantastic talent. He is bigger than Deebo Samuel. He has the physical frame of DK Metcalf and the yards after catch ability of someone close to Deebo Samuel. So I'm not trying to take anything away from Treylon Burks. I think he's absolutely a top 20 player in this draft class. He's probably my wide receiver 3. as of now, and I think he's fantastic, and I could see him going in the top 15, but personally, I think he's just being a little bit overhyped right now. Although, if you saw his hand size today at the Combine, holy smokes, that guy has mitts for hands. The Las Vegas Raiders at 26 moved down 4 spots. They had a future third, and they select Chris Olave, wide receiver out of Ohio State, one of the highest floors of anybody in this draft class. Olave is someone who is certainly going to be a very good player. He will be able to come right in and be a starter for the Raiders, who already have a number of solid receivers. But I think Olave is just a super reliable guy, and he'll be a good pro for a while. So I think this would be a good culture-setting first pick for the new-look Las Vegas Raider front office. The Arizona Cardinals at 27 moved down 4 spots, and they're going to select Jordan Davis out of Georgia. I don't think I've ever seen Jordan Davis go to the Cardinals in a mock draft, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I think they could use some more reinforcement in the middle of that defensive line. I think Jordan Davis would be a fine scheme fit. And I think part of it might just be that Jordan Davis is usually off the board before the Cardinals pick. In that case, yeah, I get it. But I think Jordan Davis will make a lot of sense here for the Cardinals. Not to mention they moved down. They had an extra third-round pick, so not too bad if you're Arizona. The Green Bay Packers at 28 go David Bell, wide receiver out of Purdue. I really like David Bell. I think this would be a great selection for Green Bay. I do expect Aaron Rodgers back. I do expect Davante Adams back, but that's not enough. I think you need to sort of please Rodgers in the fact that they're going to give him more than just Davante Adams. So I think actually investing at the wide receiver position with an early pick could make sense. The Packers don't have a great recent track record of wide receivers, but I do think David Bell is a fantastic prospect, and he'd be a good pick here. 29, the Dolphins get Kenyon Green, offensive lineman out of Texas A&M. This was one of the easier picks in the draft. The Dolphins need offensive line really bad. I think Kenyon Green was far and away the best one on the board. He can play tackle and guard, so he has that positional flexibility. I think he's played a little bit of center as well, I want to say. So I think that pick would make a ton of sense for Miami. The Kansas City Chiefs at 30 go David Ojabo out of Michigan. Ojabo's stock has sort of been all over the place, I would say, within the past few months, but it does seem like he's always been projected to go in the first round. I would be surprised if he's not a first-round pick. But I sort of just don't really know how to feel about where he's going to end up. He could go very high, but with the rise of, like, Trayvon Walker and Jermaine Johnson, he may not go as high as them. So I'm not really sure. But the Kansas City Chiefs could look to add to their pass rush, and I think adding Ojabo here would be a fun fit. He's a little bit raw. Maybe they want someone who they know is going to contribute more right away, but David Ojabo is a physical freak and somebody who has the chance to turn into a star. Here at pick 31, this might be my most bold move of the entire video. So the Bengals, who don't normally make a ton of draft day trades, are going to move down with the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons will move up 12 spots. They're also going to receive Cincinnati's 5th rounder. The Bengals will receive both of Atlanta's 2nd rounders, 43 and 58, which they got from Tennessee in the Julio Jones trade, and Atlanta's 7th. With the pick, I have the Falcons getting Matt Corral, quarterback out of Ole Miss. If they really like Corral, I could see them making this move. Matt Ryan is still a very capable starting quarterback, and I think he will be for a little while longer, but maybe they want to go out and get their franchise quarterback, and they realize, yeah, we had these 2 second-round picks. Corral's not going to fall to 43, so why not make your move? And I think that could make sense for Atlanta. Then at 32, the Detroit Lions get Jalen Petre, safety out of Baylor. He's a very versatile defensive back with a phenomenal season this year for the Bears. He's really starting to gain a lot of first-round buzz. I saw a comparison to Darnell Savage recently. Not necessarily as players, but more so how their stock has gone up around this time. Savage ended up going into the early 20s. I don't think Petre goes that high, but I do think I could see him going in the first round. The Lions need some playmakers in the secondary, so I think that pick would make sense. Now onto the second round. We're going to move a little bit quicker, but obviously I still want to go over all of these picks in depth. We start with the Jaguars at 33, who get Daxton Hill, the versatile defensive back out of Michigan. I think Daxton Hill should be a first-round pick, so good value here for the Jaguars. Not much else to say there other than he'd be a great pick. Another player I think should go in the first round is wide receiver George Pickens, who goes to the Lions. George Pickens is a polarizing player. He had the ACL tear. He played a little bit this past season. It seems like he's all good. I know he will be participating in the Combine. I know Pickens had some character question marks early in college, but I do think he's matured a little bit. And I do think he'd be a culture fit. Again, I understand he had some early issues in college, but from the interviews I've seen and read about him, it seems like he clearly loves the game. And Dan Campbell said today at the Combine they want players who love the game of football. The GM, Brad Holmes, also explicitly said the Lions want to add some talent to the outside of their receiving core. And I think adding a true alpha receiver or someone who has alpha upside in George Pickens would be a phenomenal move here. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a great rookie season. I think he's going to be a very good player, but I don't see Amon-Ra as someone who can be a true alpha #1 receiver. I think George Pickens does have that upside, so as a Lions fan, I'd be pretty happy with this selection. And overall, I think the Lions have had a good draft so far. 35, the Jets get Arnold Ebiketie, edge rusher out of Penn State. I think they could use a little bit more on the defensive line, get some more bodies going after the quarterback. Jamari Sawyer, versatile offensive lineman out of Georgia, to the Giants. He can play tackle. He can play inside as well. So here you go, Giants fans. There's the offensive lineman you've wanted. George Karlaftis, edge rusher out of Purdue, to the Texans at 37. I already know people are going to come for my head for this pick. Everybody has Karlaftis going seemingly in the top 20. I could see him being a first rounder. I never understood the top 10 to 15 hype with him, and I'm not sure he's going to be a first-round pick, as seen by this mock draft. He's a very good player. He has a high motor, but he doesn't really have the ideal length, and that's a big deal for pass rushers. So that's why I could see him going quite a bit later than expected, but I think he's too good of a player who to pass up. Kyle Hamilton and George Karlaftis here would be a nice draft for Houston. 38, we've got a trade. The New York Jets are on the board. This is the pick they got from the Sam Darnold trade, but they are sending it to Minnesota. The Jets will receive pick 46, pick 155, and a future 4 that the Vikings just got from the Chargers. So the Jets add a couple of high day 3 selections and are only going to move back 8 spots. The Vikings, meanwhile, select Sam Howell, quarterback out of North Carolina. I'm personally higher on Howell than others. If I had to pick right now, I think I would say he's my QB1 in this class, but as you can tell, I don't say that with much confidence whatsoever. I'm really not sure where his stock is, though. I have no clue how the league perceives him. I could see him being the first or second quarterback off the board in the top 15. I could also see him falling into the early second round, as he does here. The Vikings clearly don't seem committed to Kirk Cousins. They shouldn't be committed to Kirk Cousins. Sam Howell doesn't need to start right away. They did draft Kellen Mond in the 3rd round last year, but it doesn't really seem like they were really feeling him towards the end of the season, so I think the Kellen Mond experiment might have already run its course. 39, the Chicago Bears, with their first pick of the day, get Sky Moore, wide receiver out of Western Michigan. Moore is a smaller guy, 5'10", around 170, but he's great with the ball in his hands. The Bears want to add some more playmakers. And then at pick 40, I've got the Broncos going with Andrew Booth Jr. out of Clemson. A lot of people think Booth is going to go in the first round. I think these playmaking type corners are a little bit more polarizing, a little bit inconsistent in coverage, but we know they can make the big play. I think it was sort of similar with what happened to Trayvon Diggs' stock a couple years ago. Throughout Diggs' senior season, it seemed like he was going to be a lock to be like a top 15 pick, and then his stock quietly sort of went down a little bit. He ended up going in the middle of the second round, and obviously he's had a very interesting start to his career, for lack of a better term. I'm not saying Andrew Booth is going to be the next Trayvon Diggs for good and bad, but I think here at 40 would be very good value, and I think the fit makes a lot of sense. You have your shutdown guy on one side with Patrick Surtain, your playmaker on the other side with Andrew Booth Jr. I think they would complement each other very well. And I think Malik Willis in the first round and then Andrew Booth here in the second round would be a very interesting draft here for the Denver Broncos. At 41, I've got the Seahawks going with edge rusher Boye Mafe out of Minnesota. He tore it up during Senior Bowl week. Seattle's sort of in a weird spot, obviously, with the whole Russell Wilson thing. It seems like he's going to stick around, so I think Seattle will still try to win games. And with Mafe here, they're going to add some more pass rushing. Boye Mafe is starting to get some first-round buzz. I don't see it quite yet, but it could happen. Dylan Parham, guard out of Memphis, to the Washington football team, and it seems like Brandon Scherf is as good as gone, so here's your replacement. 43 at the Bengals, getting Tyler Smith, offensive tackle out of Tulsa. So I don't know how Bengals fans are going to feel about this. There weren't really any great offensive linemen for them at 31. Some of them might be screaming for me to pick Bernard Raymond. I think Raymond goes a little bit lower than expected. We'll talk a little bit more about why in a second when we get to him. But Tyler Smith is a player who quietly has risen up boards for many. I know Daniel Jeremiah had him going in the first round, which I think is a little bit jumping the gun, but I see where he's coming from. And the Bengals don't necessarily have to go offensive line here. I could see them just spending for it in free agency and look elsewhere, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. But if not, Smith here would not be too bad of a selection. Myjai Sanders, edge rusher out of Cincinnati to the Cleveland Browns. Wide receiver and front seven are both very glaring needs for Cleveland. The rest of their roster is pretty good. I mean, quarterback is obviously a question mark, but you're good at running back, you're good on the offensive line, you're good in the secondary. So, assuming they don't go quarterback, it's wide receiver and front seven. Myjai Sanders had a very solid season this last year for Cincinnati. I think he'd be solid value. Bernhard Raimann finally off the board here at 45 to the Ravens. So, I don't think Bernhard Raimann is a first rounder. He's a very weird prospect. Somebody who originally was a tight end, converted over to offensive tackle, has all the athleticism in the world, but he's still super raw. He's going to be 25 when the season starts, so, I mean, it's not like he's 21 or 22 and he has all this time to develop. So I think teams will take note of that with the lack of experience and age. He's going to go, I think, a little bit later than expected. He was very inconsistent at the Senior Bowl, had some bad moments, so that's why I think he goes a little bit late. But with the upside and the athleticism, it might be too hard for Baltimore to pass up. Travis Jones, interior defensive lineman out of UConn to the Jets. He had a great Senior Bowl. The Jets already went defensive line earlier in the second round with Arnold Ebiketie. Now they moved down. They add Jones, continuing to add to that defensive line. So overall, a solid draft here for the Jets. The Colts at 47 go Carson Strong, quarterback out of Nevada. It seems like they really want to get rid of Wentz, which I don't necessarily blame them, but my issue is they don't have the first-round pick. How are they going to get someone better than Carson Wentz, unless they go out and sign someone like Mitchell Trubisky or Jimmy Garoppolo? But I feel like that'd be a lateral move. It's not like those two are that much better than Carson Wentz, so I think ideally they would prefer one of the good veterans, but that's not going to happen. They don't have the ammo. So next bet here is the draft, and if they get Carson Strong to fall to them, who arguably is the best arm talent in the draft, they may look his way. Strong isn't the most mobile. He does have the issues with his knee, but just going off arm talent alone, he might have the best in this draft. Kaiir Elam, cornerback out of Florida to the Vikings at 48. Elam's a solid player. I know a lot of people have him projected going in the first round. Sort of similar with Andrew Booth. I could see him going a little bit later than expected. But overall, a very interesting draft here for the Minnesota Vikings. They move down, then they move up, and they add Zion Johnson, Sam Howell, and Kaiir Elam, which is not a bad trio at all for them. The New Orleans Saints need wide receiver pretty badly, so they're going to add John Mechie out of Alabama. John Mechie tore his ACL in the SEC Championship, but sort of as we were talking about with Jameson Williams earlier in the video, with modern medicine, ACL injuries are a lot easier to overcome, and I think John Mechie should be able to play early in the season. You can make the case outside of Michael Thomas, he'd be their best receiver on the roster. So I think adding John Mechie, being able to plug him in once he's healthy, would be a pretty good pick for them. At 50, I have the Dolphins getting Breece Hall, running back out of Iowa State. I think Breece Hall will be the first running back off the board, and I think he should be the first running back off the board. Breece Hall is a big, powerful, sturdy back with 3-down upside. He has great potential catching the football, and I think he's the best running back in this draft class, and the Dolphins certainly could use a running back, although you could make the case maybe they just want to continue to build on the offensive line, but they have some pieces there. They need someone in that backfield alongside Tua, so I think Breece Hall would be a nice pick. Jahan Dotson, wide receiver out of Penn State to the Eagles. I'd be surprised if Dotson fell this far. It's just sort of how the board played out. I think the Eagles will try to prioritize adding a veteran wide receiver in the offseason. I don't think they're going to pick one in the first round. I think they could look at someone like Allen Robinson. I think that would make a lot of sense. Maybe they are in the Calvin Ridley trade talks as well. Even if they get an outside receiver, I think if you can get someone like Jahan Dotson, plug him in the slot, that'd be perfect. Jahan Dotson's a really good player. Even though he's a small guy, he plays big. He has a big catch radius, and obviously he's very explosive. I think having Devontae Smith and some veteran on the outside with Jahan Dotson and Quez Watkins as well, that's a nice little four-headed monster, along with Dallas Goedert, who's one of the best tight ends in the NFL. The Steelers at 52 go Abraham Lucas, offensive tackle out of Washington State. The Steelers need offensive line quite a bit. They want to protect their new quarterback, Kenny Pickett, so there you go. Lewis Seen, safety out of Georgia to the Las Vegas Raiders. I think the Raiders are certainly going to look to add to the secondary. The safety position was very important in Patrick Graham's scheme with the New York Giants, so I think they will prioritize adding safety talent. They have Tre'Von Merrick, who is phenomenal, but I think they're going to look to add some other guys. And Lewis Sin out of Georgia, he's a playmaker. He's real good. Christian Watson, wide receiver out of North Dakota State to the Patriots. He's a height, weight, speed guy, great build, very talented player for the Bison. Really turned some people's heads during the Senior Bowl week, and it seems like his stock is increasing quite a bit. I do think he ends up here in the second round, and New England has a good track record of developing wide receivers. We've got another trade here. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to move up to the 55th pick with the Arizona Cardinals, who are going to add a 4th rounder this year and next year, along with pick 62. So the Cardinals moved down twice today. They add a 3 from the Bucs, a 4 from the Chiefs, and a 4 next year from the Chiefs. Good value for Arizona. The Chiefs are moving up for Jaquan Brisker out of Penn State. Brisker's a freak. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes way higher than this, especially if he tests as well as he could at the Combine. So this is a pick that I'm sort of not really feeling all that much, because I don't think Brisker's going to fall this far, to be brutally honest. But again, this is sort of how the board played out. Kansas City's not complaining, though. They're getting themselves a stud. Leo Chenal, linebacker out of Wisconsin to the Dallas Cowboys. Leighton Vander Esch appears to be good as gone. Jalen Smith was let go last year. And as we've seen with Micah Parsons, he's not really going to be used as a traditional linebacker. So I think they could use some more like true linebackers, off-ball guys. I think Leo Chenal would be a solid selection. This pick here for the Bills is an interesting one. It's James Cook, running back out of Georgia. So the Bills are adding playmakers here in this draft with Treylon Burks at 25 and now James Cook. I think a lot of people are going to think this is rich, especially with guys like Isaiah Spiller, Kenneth Walker, both still on the board. I really like James Cook, though. I think he's super explosive. He's a big play waiting to happen. He's great in the pass game as well, and I think Josh Allen's going to really enjoy him. The Bills have fine talent at running back. Devin Singletary's an okay player. Zach Moss is whatever, although the Bills didn't really seem to believe in him much last year. But I think they're going to look to add another guy. I think James Cook would pretty quickly become their best running back on that roster, and I think this would be a nice pick for the Bills. I don't know how their fans would feel about it, but I like it. Perion Winfrey to the Bengals here at 58. They got this pick earlier from Atlanta. Perion Winfrey was great during Senior Bowl week. He was the MVP of the Senior Bowl game, and I think he has cemented himself here in the top 2 rounds. I think Cincinnati would be a nice landing spot. The Packers select Brian Asamoah, linebacker out of Oklahoma. I think they could look to add more talent at the linebacker position. They could consider Chad Muma out of Wyoming, Christian Harris out of Alabama, but Brian Asamoah as well. Very solid selection here. Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver out of South Alabama to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think Mike Evans is really going to be their only key playmaker back on the roster next season, at least at wide receiver. Obviously, Antonio Brown's gone. Gronk is probably gone. Chris Godwin is probably gone as well. They are developing younger guys. Scotty Miller's fine. Cyril Grayson, I think that's his name, played pretty well down the stretch last season. Guys like Tyler Johnson and Jalen Darden were recent day 3 picks as well, but I think they may look to add an early investment here at wide receiver. I think Jalen Tolbert would be a solid selection. Roger McCreary, corner out of Auburn to the Niners. McCreary's gone a lot higher in mock drafts. Maybe this is a little bit low. He did have a great season in the SEC, but the Niners aren't going to complain because he's a very talented player. Kenneth Walker finally off the board to the Arizona Cardinals. So the Cardinals have a very interesting draft. They moved down twice. They get Jordan Davis at 27 and now Kenneth Walker at 62. The Cardinals have a talented backfield. James Conner and Chase Edmonds are a really nice 1-2 punch. They complement each other quite well, but James Conner is not under contract and Chase Edmonds is also not under contract next season, so they may want to add another running back. I think a lot of people have Kenneth Walker as RB1. I don't, but I do think Walker's a good player. Trey McBride, tight end out of Colorado State to the Bengals. CJ Uzomah is a free agent. I think they're going to bring him back. Uzomah's clearly one of the most important people in that locker room. Super high character guy, big leader for them. Very vocal, outspoken player. But maybe they want to add another tight end. I think McBride is arguably the best one in this draft. He's a good safety blanket, gives the Bengals another good option in the passing game, and you can't have too many good receivers. The final pick of the day, I think, is one of the better ones. Linebacker Christian Harris out of Alabama to the Denver Broncos. I could see him going quite a bit higher than this. He is sort of a sleeper first rounder for me. In my last mock draft, I think I had the Lions getting him at 32. So this is probably the latest he ends up. Again, another solid selection in what has been a very interesting draft here for the Denver Broncos with Malik Willis, Andrew Booth, and now Christian Harris. So that's going to end today's mock draft. Let me know what you thought of these selections down below in the comments. Who do you think is going to do well at the Combine? Who do you think is not going to do well at the Combine? We'll be back with Mock 4.0 sometime next week after the Combine, as well as before free agency, which is also coming up as well. So we're getting into the fun part of the NFL offseason with the Combine, free agency. The draft is probably about 8-9 weeks away at this point. So we're inching closer and closer. So should be a fun next couple of months. Hope everybody enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Peace out.